Welcome back to another episode celebrating the release of the new Superman film, which I am really looking forward to. Today's episode is going to be real simple. I'm talking about Superboy, and I liked Superboy comics so much back in the day that I subscribed to Superboy comics along with everything else. But let's take a look at some Superboy comics and talk about the character. Superboy was created by Jerry Siegel, who obviously created Superman with Joe Shuster. Jerry Siegel created Superboy mid-40s, I think, after he got out of the Army. Roughly, I'm probably wrong on that, but somewhere around 45, I think Superboy first appeared. He would have his own series, and it would become immensely popular through the 50s into the 60s and 70s. Superboy was billed as the adventures of Superman when he was a boy. Later on, it would become the adventures of Superman when he was a teen, and it was a fun book to read. So I'm just holding up. I'll just show you a couple here and talk about some things that occurred. So obviously, Superboy was a 10-cent comic. Here is one from the late 50s, and so Superboy in the 50s and early 60s was like any of the comics. There were aliens involved, which was, the 1950s was certainly a decade where science fiction just blossomed, really took off, and Superboy was no exception to that. The Superboy comics over the years would become just fascinating to me personally. I would read them with a great sense of joy and wonder. Now, Superboy was a teenager, so here's the issue. Here's the issue that occurred with him. Of course, he was a teenager. Now, back then, younger readers were reading comics. I was very young, but I continued to read comics obviously into adulthood. And Superman comics, the Superman family of comics, were read by a variety of age groups. But Superboy was particularly interesting because he was a teen. And so teen angst, people were looking at it from that perspective. You're 12 years old, you're reading a Superboy comic, and you are emotionally involved in it. So I read these comics, and it was fascinating. Curt Swan in the 60s did some of the best artwork, and Curt Swan is really the definitive Superman artist. I've talked before, there were many, many artists that I enjoyed, and Curt Swan was my favorite Superman artist. He was, Neil Adams is also a favorite, but there were so many of them. But Curt Swan did some incredible covers. Here is Superboy 132, and look at the cover here. So we have scans popping up. The hero who was braver than Superboy. Superboy comes out of the cave. There's obviously a dragon involved, and we're immediately drawn into it. Curt Swan was one of those who could draw a dramatic scene and make you want to know what's happening, so you would spend your 12 cents and buy the comic to read it. And the stories were pretty good back then. Superboy, sadly, is not one of these characters that is given a lot of attention from DC. They are going to be reprinting right about now the Superboy with the Crypto the Superdog DC Finest edition is going to be coming out. And they're doing that strictly to capitalize upon the movie, which features Crypto. They generally avoid reprinting Superboy comics for reasons unknown to me. I don't get it at all. This character no longer exists in the DC universe. After Crisis on Infinite Earths, they killed the character. They've created other characters to take his place. They never recaptured the magic at all. I'm not going to comment on that too much because I really have strong negative feelings toward DC Comics about the way they handle their characters these days and what they've done with the brand. These iconic characters have been abused by DC Comics, especially under Jim Lee, who's the creative director or whatever he is. He should stick to drawing and stop pretending he's an administrator. There I go again. Sorry about that. Anyways, hey, let's talk about Superboy 136, the Decoy of the Doom Statues. This is a great one. Talk about a hook, right? We talk about the hook in literature, an opening line or paragraph that hooks you in. Well, the covers did that. And here's another classic Curt Swan. And we have Crypto the Superdog. We have Superboy in outer space. And they're looking at the Doom statues. There's Jor-El, Val-El, and other El family statues. And they've turned into kryptonite. And Crypto and Superboy are trapped on this little asteroid. what in the world is happening? So, this is the world of imagination that these comic books really brought up. That was so fantastic. I like this issue so much. I actually have 2 of them. Yeah, I know. It's the collector's problem. All right. Here's another one. All right, so we had Smallville, and here's another one from the checkered year, mid-'60s, with Ma and Pa Kent, The Mystery of the Mighty Might, and Superboy was always put into these inexplicable circumstances, and so we're wondering what's going to happen to him. So in the early stories, Superboy kept his presence a secret from the world at large. That would change depending on the writers and editors over time, and people would know he was Superboy, lived in Smallville, and they, it just depends. And then he would disappear for a while and come back as Superman when he went to Metropolis. But he's in Smallville. He's trying to keep his identity a secret while doing good things for people. Those were the best Superboy issues in the 50s and 60s, I think. And it's really fun. Here's one from that same era, the war between Superboy and Krypto. Again, we're going to get a Krypto collection from DC Comics coming up. It's about time. Maybe they will do a DC Finest Superboy's Greatest Adventures. They should do that. They should do a Superboy omnibus the way they've done Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and reprint the entire series because they have nothing going on. And so then we have, here's one that's coming up, Superboy 150, which is a Neil Adams cover. Look at the emotional impact of this, where there's fear. The emotions are raw in the drawing. Neil Adams did that better than anybody. Fantastic. And that's one of my favorite Superboy comics, is Superboy 150. And then here's another one by Kurt Swan that has the same impact, which is The Town That Hated Superboy. So as a teen, teen angst, they call it. Teens are sensitive. They have raw emotions. They're going through physical changes, emotional changes as they grow up into manhood or womanhood, as it would be. And these feelings of isolation are really profound. So you're hooked into it. This is a classic Kurt Swan Superboy cover and story. Really magnificent. I really enjoyed this. I subscribed to Superboy for a long time. Here's another one. I believe this is Neil Adams. This is a little later, where those transformations happen, and the transformations that happen in DC Comics with the Superman family are really fun because they turn into everything. We'll talk about those when we talk about the Giants next, the 80-page Giants. Anyway, Superboy. Classic cover, classic story. Really, Superboy comics were fantastic. Here's another one. Look at this. They changed the logo. This is about the same period. And he's looking in a mirror, and you have a supernatural slant on this. And, you want to know what happened. The Glass Nightmare. And, of course, they had backup features. Of course, by now they're 52 pages, and they are 25 cents, which was the same price as the original 80-page Giants. More on those later. And then, finally, we have the most interesting of all. We have Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. Now, these are Superboy stories that have been reprinted. They are constantly being reprinted. I have the big hardcover omnibus of it. I have other reprints. It's just an incredible, from Adventure Comics, Superboy. There's another giant-themed issue there. Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes was just fantastic. I still treasure these, Cosmic Boy and Mon-El and Saturn Girl and everything. They were so well done. Jim Shooter, obviously, for those of you who are fans, wrote many of those classic issues. And it's just incredible how that series has remained popular. And they're worth it. I think that the reprinting of the Legion of Superhero stories is exactly what they should have done. And they did. Here's one of my favorites. This is sadly a low-grade copy. The Legion Chain Gang. Kurt Swan cover, obviously. Classic Kurt Swan all the way. Look at this. I mean, you want to know, how could this happen? And that's the hook. How could this happen? It gets young kids reading comics, developing reading skills. Without a doubt, one of my all-time favorite comics is Adventure Comics number 357, The Ghost of Firolad. Firolad was killed in the series. Very rare for DC Comics to kill a character during this period and then keep him dead. You know, the trend became kill a popular character, and then bad writers would come along later and re-energize the character, give the character a rebirth, whatever stupid thing they could think of. Marvel has the same problem, and it's ridiculous. But Firolad has remained dead. He did come, his brother, I think his twin brother came back for a while. But in any event, as far as I know, he's still dead. This is The Ghost of Firolad, and, you know, it was really a fascinating, very well done book. And this is one of the more popular adventures with, of course, a Kurt Swan cover. So just to go through some of these, you know, and then, you know, it took off. Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes took off. Mike Grell began, you know, looking at these, and they were just, you know, they're fantastic. Superboy went on and on. I have so many Superboy and Legion comics in my collection. It's a little ridiculous. I just wanted to go over that a little bit with you guys, because you can't really talk about Superboy without talking about the allure Superboy had for teen boys, and also the fact that there's a connection to the Legion of Superheroes, which is really a watershed moment for Superboy and Superman mythology in the comics. And again, the Legion of Superhero books are widely reprinted, and you can find all sorts of editions with that, with all of the early stuff. Again, Superboy comics themselves, they get reprinted now and again, but DC has neglected to put out a comprehensive, you know, from the first appearance through issue 1 and on. They haven't done that. They've done it with just about everything else. So I'm hoping we get more of that. So that's just a look back at Superboy, one of my favorite characters that I subscribe to. And we have a couple of more editions of this special month of Superman coming. So until then, my friends, stay well, stay happy, feed your brain, and read a Superman comic book.